It's Tuesday, which means we are live back here. Tom Johnson _ verified. Noble Oak National Brand Ambassador in my kitchen in Seattle, still sheltering in place for the most part. Last news from Seattle is that it'll be, we're not in phase 2 yet, so we're still around the corner. Eric Job and Russell Dillon. We're going to be joined today by Russell Dillon, who's joining us right now, and we'll talk to him. Russell, what's up, buddy?
What's up, man? How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm handing the phone off to my amazing barback life partner and camera person.
Oh, you got a whole barback and camera person. I think this is a first.
It's really easy to shelter in place when everyone else is doing all the heavy lifting.
How you doing, buddy? Where are you coming to us from?
Doing good. We are in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. It just became 7 o'clock, so everyone's outside clapping for all the first responders. Some air horns and things in the background. I don't know if you can hear them or not.
It's clap o'clock.
It is clap o'clock, which used to mean something very different before all this.
Shout out to all the first responders, folks who are out there on the front lines in hospitals, 7 o'clock. So you are a bartender, author, poet, dude, still skateboarder, Brooklyn.
I do all the other things mediocre.
I don't even do the first one very well, but let's start. Let's make a drink. You've got all the stuff there, and you've got your bar lined up. So I think I have most of that stuff.
Anyone who's making this at home, it's going to be sort of like a hybridized whiskey sour paper plane cocktail. So it just seems like it's a nice day here in New York. So having something a little bit uplift, a little refreshing. If you guys want to start, always start with the egg.
Oh man, I don't have an egg. I thought we had an egg. We ate all the eggs.
That's okay. I might just mess this up and get a joke in it. So
Jesse Harris and it's a dude sandwich over here.
Oh man, Jesse Harris is one of the people, if not bartenders, and he also just got one of the cutest dogs on Instagram.
Send us pictures of your dog, Jesse Harris.
Oh my god, that's literally the rest of my day besides skateboarding and making this drink with you guys. So once you get the egg white in there, if you want to start, we got some fresh squeezed lemon juice. If you don't have one at home, a little beehive juicer. We're gonna do 3/4 of an ounce of that lemon juice, and then a little simple syrup, which could be tequila as far as you know. Unfortunately,
How much simple syrup?
just 1/4 of an ounce. And for this, if you're not like a bar nerd, you don't work somewhere, and you're at home just following along, it's always just sort of the method to start with the ingredients you care the least about. So if you mess up and you put too much juice or too much sugar in, you can dump that out and you haven't wasted any alcohol. So then we're going to do 1/2 ounce Aperol. And then Tom, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this.
Yeah, I've had a little bit of that in my day.
A little bourbon. I think it's always important to taste it first.
Ooh.
Make sure it's fresh. You don't want to. Oh, that's delicious. You're going to do 1 ounce of Noble Oak. And there is egg white in there. We're going to do a dry shake just to emulsify the egg white, sort of like flash cooking with the citrus. So once you're done adding the egg, broth, grab some ice. And then for this one, very, very fancy. And we had a coupe in the freezer.
freezer coop's the best, man.
Yeah, coop. And since Jesse Harris is watching, we're going to go ahead and try to create on the top.
Just don't let him call you a nerd like that.
With a little Angostura swirl.
Look at that. Oh, beautiful. Cheers.
Ah, cheers.
I'm going on the rocks.
And now we'll just walk this way.
This camera work is excellent.
It's amazing. We went to art. And now she's going to hand it off to me.
Look at that. Boom. And he does magic.
That's the most. Thank you very much. That's the most.
He's got a whole camera crew. Oh, beautiful apartment. Thank you, Jesse. I assume he's talking to you, not me.
Well, I hope so.
It does look lovely there. You got a lot. It's very lush.
You should come over. We got super lucky, man. That's our koi pond with the fish down there.
You got a whole koi pond in your backyard? Is that in your backyard or just next to it?
That's my backyard. Hammock.
Dude, I just got a hammock. Hammock life. The game changer, dude. Game changer.
How are you doing out there, man? I know we talked a little bit off camera, but it's been a bit.
Yeah, things have been well, man. You know, West Coast is being very cautious, very safe. They're letting, really getting behind the strictest CDC guidelines. So Seattle has a 4-phase rollout, and we're in phase 1, which debuted about the beginning of the month. And it's looking like phase 2, it's either going to be another week or 2 or maybe a bit more before we get into phase 2, which is the first phase that includes bars or restaurants, no bars. Restaurants at 50% capacity. So it might be back to the drawing board because we're a little bit over the daily cases, new daily cases to get there. But they have a pretty good sense of the populations that those new cases are coming from. It's mostly hospital workers, frontline workers.
Yeah.
Not out in the public. So it is kind of isolated, the populations that are responsible or that where all those infections are happening.
Yeah, I mean, just before this call, I was on the call with the other guys from over at Basic and Second Son trying to work on like a rollout plan if this what and sort of, you get the playbook for the opponent you don't know how to plan for. So, yeah, it's just important to be able to, I hate the word pivot after all of this, but you have to be able to just make a change.
Yeah, it's something new every day, every week. It's kind of that way and on my end of things, just in what daily life feels like, and I think that's what everybody's kind of going through.
Yeah.
Miguel, yes, we are available in Texas. Check out the website. There's a spirits locator.
I imagine you guys are probably, if Michaela happens to be in Austin, a wonderful bar, Nickel City.
Oh yeah, you can find it in Nickel City if you can find your way there.
They're doing cocktails to go as well. The wonderful Travis Tober.
So normally we would just launch into what's your life story, which we can do that because I actually don't know a lot about your life before New York. I heard the full story. I know that you were in San Francisco for a while, but also
it's a long one, man. That happens when you get old. So I was born, grew up in Long Island. Mom still lives out there in the same house that we grew up in. And then bounced around New England. I actually went to 5 undergraduate schools in 4 years. And then Spent a little bit of time in Ireland studying Irish literature, and went back to Long Island to afford grad school and work in a bookstore. And then once that was done, moved out to San Francisco. I spent about 10 years out there, and that's where I started working in bars and restaurants. Before that, it was all skate shops and bookstores.
Was it New England to San Francisco? So that was like undergrad, get a degree in New England?
And then Long Island
Oh,
for
no, Ireland, you said.
program for my master's at Bennington. And once that was done, I moved out to San Francisco. And it was up to the last minute, man. It was like I was either going to move to Brooklyn and be an hour away from my family, who I love very much, but drive me very much crazy, or go to San Francisco for a lot less money and move in with a couple of friends from college. So I ended up doing that. I showed up with 2 bags of clothes, a laptop, and a skateboard, and tried to be a college professor, which doesn't pay very much and is really hard to get a job straight out of grad school without like a book or many publications. So that's how I ended up getting into bars. I bumped into a guy who was also my original bar mentor, Chris Libby, who was working then at a bar called Solstice and now is at Madrone, where I also worked later on. And we bumped into each other at the laundromat. He had an Emerson College sweatshirt on, which is where I graduated from. When we started talking, I was like, oh man, I think I got to move back to New York. Like, I can't afford anything. I was working a temp job at Zappos.com when it was in San Francisco.
Oh, wow. Yeah. The early days of the shoes.
Yeah. And he was like, you know what? Come meet me up here and I'll introduce you to the owner. And I got a job as a door guy, which like at 26 and 27, skateboarding every day, I was like fucking emaciated. Like I would wear like a couple of sweatshirts, so I looked bigger because I was used to like New York door guys and like shit actually getting really fucking rough. And I was just out there and just slowly I would wear like one less sweatshirt a night. And this like yuppie early on was like, "You look pretty skinny for a door guy." Like the only line I had, I was like, "You ever see Roadhouse?" That guy's Roadhouse, son.
You could go straight Swayze on you.
You don't know what's gonna happen.
I would go on a Patrick Swayze tangent, but I'll spare us all.
But yeah, then I was doing that, and I was at home one night and got a call. The bar back had hurt. He slipped and fell down the stairs. So they needed someone like in 5 minutes. So I ran up there, was there in 3, and I started bar backing. And then Chris Libby taught me how to bartend, like lessons that since that time, which this is almost 20 years ago, I've thought about how he taught me and how I would try to teach someone else. And he was so much better at it than I am.
Yeah, what were those early days of learning like? It's like, boom, somebody slips down the stairs. All right, you're busting glasses, you're humping ice, you're refilling bottles. Like, did you have any idea what you were doing at that point? Because you were around it, because you had been at bars.
No, I didn't. It was the old days of bars and restaurants where like you were getting yelled at, and at the end of the night, you knew it wasn't personal. Someone's like, "Go get this fucking shit right now," and you're like, "Yep." And then at the end of the night, it's like, "Hey man, I'm sorry I yelled at you." I was like, "You don't apologize at the end of a bar shit, man. That's the way I learned it. I don't know."
You just crack a beer and carry on, and
yeah. So then I started learning how to bartend there. I worked. This is the funniest thing. It's like 20 years of bartending. I've worked 10 years at one place in San Francisco called Fly Bar, the sister bar of this place, Solstice, that Chris taught me at. And then I've been at Basic for 8 years.
Has it been that long already?
Yeah. Basic was my first job when I got back to New York. And it was funny because the place I worked in San Francisco was a beer and wine sake bar. Those were like sake based. You know, there was like a 1970s Michelob beer tap that connected to a box of sake in the back. So you would just smack that out, throw a couple of juices in it, and put it in a martini glass. And it was more, you know, dive bar, yeah. But that was always my thing. I always liked working fast. And when I moved to New York, it was very fun because I had to learn how to make drinks. Like Solstice, I would make like
it was 2004. I was making like raspberry mojitos and shit like that. And it was just, I don't know, it's just kind of funny to me. And then when I moved back, before I moved back, the owner of Madrone, Mike Krause, we became friends. He's like, dude, if you're going to move, just start working at a bar that's got spirits again. And like, it'll be another place I can go back. Like, we'll help you learn the things you forgot over 10 years. And I did that when I came back. I started, I was the original brunch bartender at Basic.
That was when they launched brunch.
Yeah, it was the day before I came in. I met Jay for the first time. And we had a quick conversation. And he's like, do you want to work brunch? And I was like, yeah, whatever, man. I don't care. So then I started working at Basic and have literally been there ever since.
And have you met Jay before? Or was it, you were just like, hey, I'm new to town, like, I'm back in New York?
We had a lot of friends in common. He worked with someone I knew at the Breslin and the John Dory, and she introduced me to Jay. And then it was, it's pretty rapid, and I feel super fortunate for the people I got to meet through Jay and all those people, because then it was like friends with TJ from Mother's Ruin, and I got to meet all these guys, and then I became friends with Brandon Bramhall, who was working at Basic as well before he started doing Attaboy.
Yeah.
So, but between Jay, Mike Mack, who also was at Mother's Ruin, and Brandon Bramhall, they like really put in work for me. They're like, he knows how to bartend, but like he's going to have to learn how to do all the other shit, which was fun. And at that time, learning from those guys, man, it meant a lot. And it was great to meet the other guys that I didn't know about Sasha Petrasky or, Sammy or Mickey or any of these guys. I got to meet him and I was like, oh, you're like good guys. You're just really fucking good at this. Toby. And I was like, it's pretty funny when my friends that I made fun of for being cocktail dudes in San Francisco, I was like, that's cool. You make drinks. I make money. That's adorable that you do this. And then they were like, what are you doing in New York? How do you know all these people that like they looked up to you? I was like, oh, it's kind of weird. I just became friends with them. And now I have to learn how to talk to them about work.
So you were a bartender and you got into it through work, school, skateboarding, just happenstance.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things too, where I think it's why like I love I used to love like an old salty bartender and then I became one. But like when you would just go someplace and see someone's like, yeah, I mean, I can make that for you. I'm like, oh, grandpa.
I was trying to look up, wasn't there some article that was like, Russell Dillon, a bartender's bartender. Like, every bartender in America wants to sit at Russell Dillon's bar. And I was trying to look that one up and really embarrass you. Because I want to do this like I'm like an old PBS Charlie Rose thing. And I'm like, my next guest is Russell Dillon. I'm like, Russell, tell us about this interview in Thrillist.com or whatever.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I like bartending. It's one of those things that like, in the beginning, I was like, I need money. I'm going to start bartending. I'm going to do this. I'm like, always going to be a poet that bartends, never a bartender that writes poetry. And I still, I don't know. I think the art of poetry and writing a little bit higher because you get nothing for it. Like, there's this thing that I was like saying that I stole from someone else. It's like, if you think about a sheet of paper, it has a legitimate value. You can sell it on the open market, say it's 2 cents. But once you write a poem on it, it's not worth that anymore. So it's sort of like the constant devaluation of things. And I think that's important because you only do that because you love it. And there's a lot of people that will keep bartending just because they need the money. But like you see that right away in someone.
Yeah. And it's very rare to spend that much time at a place in this industry. And you've done it now twice on different coasts in different cities. Is there some sort of impulse you think that what is it that makes you the rare creature who stays at the same place? Is it because you just find a place that you love that's a good fit, that is everything that you need?
Yeah, or I don't know, either that or you work with people that allow you to make it something that you think makes sense that ultimately, I mean, has to make them money. So those aren't like my only 2 jobs. I've had a bunch of other jobs, but I've had them for brief periods of time that ended like, amicably, to just be like, hey, look, man, like, it's not going to be for me. Like, I know that we could do this, but ultimately I'm not going to be happy. Me not being happy doing this work is going to make your place like less than it could be.
Yeah, I
So,
found that being in that work relationship with a bar is a bit like being in a relationship. So it's like you and Basic are common law at this point.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because I sleep there sometimes. Oh, and just my second trick.
Yeah, that's a good trick. It's a lovely trick. So I wrote down these questions, and let's give some of them a crack.
Sure.
So especially since you have, a background in the arts, when I talked to like Tanya, right? She was like, she got into bartending through DJing, right? So it's kind of like, oh, as a DJ, I knew what music was like, I knew what vibe was like at bars. I used that to get into bars. And it's like, I think a lot in that term. So what is this cocktail? If it was a book, a movie, a song, an album, the drink that you made, what is it? What do you call it?
Oh, man. I don't know. I just kind of wanted a whiskey sour. I wanted to throw a little Aperol in there and give it some lifts. So I guess like it's like a Flaming Lips track that didn't make the album.
Nice. Okay. What era of Flaming Lips? Was this like Zyrika era or like their earlier garagier stuff?
Like Yoshimi.
Okay.
Like it's definitely a hit. It's like the banger that everyone will sort of nod their head to and not think that much about.
So we talked a bit about your bartending, how you kind of got into it. You've mentioned having a mentor. Do you have any favorite individual moments? Because you've got stories, man. You've got some stuff. You've seen some stuff happen.
Yeah, trying to think, one of the first things when I first started working at Fly Bar, the guy, John Vitiver, who was managing, he's like talking me through, he's being very sweet. And at the end of the night, like got everyone in San Francisco, I don't know if it's like that in Seattle, but like your last call is your last call. And it's aggressive. Everyone out. And so we did this, and I wasn't used to like yelling at people and like getting everyone out and being like, it's hospitality. And then all of a sudden you turn into this mean person that's screaming at people, but you still want them to come back. So we turned the lights up and sort of like got together. He's like, how'd you feel? Checked in, was very sweet. And he's like, so what do we do now? And I was like, clean up, count the money, and this. And he's like, no, we turn the lights and look on the floor for drugs and money. And I was like, oh, wow, I love this job.
Yeah, you gotta fix your order of operations in your bar clothes, man.
Yeah. There was a guy that worked there too, not John. I'm not naming his name, but he would like walk over, and if he picked a pill up, he would just put it in his mouth and swallow it.
Whatever it was.
Like, I've never seen something like this before in my life. And he's like, this is like, yeah, that's what you do at the end of the night. I was like, oh my God. And I was also sort of endeared to the bar industry where I'm like, I'm never going to be the worst one.
Yeah, that's a good way to learn. It's like, that's where the bar's been set. We're gold.
Yeah. I'm like, and you're my superior?
And I'm really interested in your. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
I also studied English literature. Never got to go to Ireland and study in Ireland, and am not a published author. Congratulations! I think you're the first published author we've had on here.
That and a token gets you on the subway.
Get a Euro pass. What got you into that? Like, what put you on that path to go to school? What got you to Ireland? Are there any like works or pieces of art that are really kind of like tent poles to you in your trajectory, either on the bar side or on the other side?
Yeah, shit, that's a really hard one, Tom. Jeez.
And this is like we could have a 4-hour-long conversation just about that. But if you've got any,
Yeah, I think I've always been sort of a was a weird kid. I'm a weird guy. Like, I remember the first time I was in a bookstore and my mom was like, you can get a book, but like you can just get one. And I immediately started trying to like work on the hustle. So I brought over 3 poetry books. I was like, they're small. Can I get 3 if they're small? So it was Lawrence Ferlinghetti's Pictures of the Gone World, Allen Ginsberg's Howl, and Shakespeare's Sonnets. I think I was like 12 or 13.
Wow, just bangers.
I'm not going to lie to you, man. If she had the wherewithal to look at me and be like, if Harry Potter was a thing in the 80s, she'd have been like, no, go get this. And I probably would be like successful in some regard. But I was like, oh, no, I'm going to read these little ones. And like, you know, I didn't understand them at first, but there was things I liked about them. And then, you know, you don't find a lot of people that like poetry. So you start talking about that and trade books. This is when like music and literature was sort of like fetish property because you didn't have there wasn't the internet. So you'd hear about something from someone and be like, oh man, you call another store on the phone and talk to someone and ask them about it. Or like if you had a cool record store or bookstore, you'd like ask them to order it. Like having access to New York City growing up in Long Island, people, I mean, I didn't because I've been dressed in the same since I was like 13, but people would like come in and understand fashion and see like what was happening and felt alive. I just like sitting alone, reading books on the beach, throwing rocks and stuff.
Well, and in that vein, what were you listening to at the time? Was there anything that was like seminal? Because I know that music is really important to you too. So was that like dual things? Was that like oh, this is what I listen to? I'm just imagining like young Russell Dillon like going to the record store and finding, I don't know,
Motley Crue.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Ronnie James Dio or something.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's, you know, for that, my sister was like a young metal girl, which was awesome because she did so much shit wrong, which made me look like the good kid later on. Like my mom, we were like a religious family, so she would like, you know, 666, the number of the beast blast, and she played drums in like a 8th grade. And I was like, all I got to do is sort of like not look dangerous, and my mom won't know what I'm doing. So that kind of stuff, and then I think I went through a classic rock phase because I wanted to fit in with older kids. I used to always be friends with people that were older than me until now I can't do that anymore unless I hang out with Jan Warren or Don Venegas. So back then I was like, you know, Led Zeppelin, The Doors, Pink Floyd, The Wall. I spent a lot of time listening to like front to back in the dark. Like just being a weird kid, I thought I had to like be sad and be hurt all the time or like really think about things, and so pop music wasn't a thing for me.
Yeah, we have eerily similar youths.
Yeah,
but I think you understood poetry better than I did.
Yeah. I don't know about that, but yeah. But then I mean, it was also like the '80s in New York, so hip hop was coming out, and I was super excited about that. So breaking to Electric Boogaloo. My grandfather, who was a New York City cop, took me to see Breakin' in the theater. And I was like, yeah, we saw it and we came back. I just remember him talking to my grandmother. And he's like, what was it like? Was it like a violent movie? Because it's like urban. And he's like, it was amazing. Like anytime people would start to have conflict, they would just dance about it. It's like, yeah, I guess so. You know, like, I liked Prince back then, but not in the way that like I understood it. I was like, man, this guy's cool.
Yeah.
But I remember like the Fat Boys. That was one of my first tapes. But then later, skateboarding got me more into like punk rock.
So you found punk through skateboarding?
I did, yeah. I was like real late to the game with a lot of things. Being friends with kids that were like, oh man, do you know about like token entry in 7 seconds and, you know, like Murphy's Law? And we started trading tapes, and then at the same time, like the same day I got a Murphy's Law tape, I got Public Enemy, Fear of the Black Planet. So at that point, I don't know what I like. I just like music, I guess.
Yeah, there was a lot going on there too. But there's so much culturally going on that you're living through. I mean, what got you into skateboarding?
I I'm not good at groups. I think like team sports. I was like a soccer kid. I tried to play baseball. I was horrible at it. I didn't really like a lot of the athletic kids because it would pick on the artsy kids, and I was sort of like right in between. So it was, I don't know. I didn't have a problem spending time alone in a parking lot, being frustrated and like working on something that really meant nothing to anyone, which I think led to poetry.
Yeah, I mean there are interesting similarities and parallels, and I think not a thing that most people think about between poetry and skateboarding and kind of the solitude of it, because I didn't really think about that. I always think about it as kind of a social thing, right? It's like skate parks and people kind of hanging out together, but they're really still doing their own thing, right? It's like,
Yeah, especially in the 80s, man, people hated skateboarders. It was one of those things that like I look at people now and, there's a song about a skater boy. That was not the case when I was growing up. It was, you were like a pariah.
it was a counterculture thing.
Oh yeah, like we'd be skateboarding in like a parking lot and football players would pull up and like always tease the smallest kid. And it was one of those things where like walking the border between that in high school, it's like, oh no, man, he's cool, but like that guy dyed his hair. That guy looks like a fucking jerk. And then, pick on that. And I mean, that's kids. I think that's anything at this point.
Yeah, it's like the tribalism, but it sounds like you were like on the fence for a moment, and then you had to pick a team. And so you picked skating, and then you found punk rock and all these other kinds of countercultural things through that.
Yeah. And you find your people in that. And it's sort of like the ability also, you're going through adolescence. You realize you don't have to be just like someone to be friends with them. And that's like a slower lesson to be like, oh, now I am friends with this football guy that wants to talk about poetry or something else, or they like hip hop or they like music. And
All right, I'm losing it. This thing, stay open.
what are you losing?
Oh, just all my questions, my cheat sheet.
Oh, okay.
And I think we've already kind of touched on this one a little bit too. Kind of, we're painting a picture here.
Okay.
You got to New York. You started making drinks. You started making cocktails. But like, do you have at this point like a Russell Dillon philosophy of hospitality or of bartending? Because I think that we're there. I think we're most of the way there. But I'm interested to hear the way that you put it all together.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the earlier days, it was always like, this is a way to make money. This is fun. And then ultimately, when you think about, I mean, I didn't hear or think of the word hospitality in bartending probably until like 12 years ago. It was just like run and gun, mercenary, whatever type of thing to get through the shift. Don't scream at someone or punch them or like accepting that behavior. Then I learned a lot about this from Chris and John and Mike too. Just like what is a room, and like how do you get a vibe in a room? How do you make people feel comfortable? How do you? It's never drinks, because you could make someone have the best night of their life drinking Bud cans and shots of anything, and you could also give someone the worst experience with the best executed drink you could possibly imagine, and just like not care about them, not care about where you are. And I think the thing that used to make me angry is if I was ever working with someone that seemed like they were there for themselves more than for the person. And that changed me a lot once I realized that. I was like, all right, like you don't have to love this person, but like you're representing this complete other entity, the space, you as a person in it. And like, I don't know, you don't have to like drink coffee with someone that comes to your bar every day, but you develop a relationship with them if you're doing it right. And it's not just a monetary transaction. I think the thing I like the most about Basic and also Fly Bar in San Francisco was that it was like the definition of a public house. It was sort of a neighborhood spot that people would come to that would feel comfortable, and they would share their triumphs and their failures and, their just sadness and happiness. Like I bartended wakes, I bartended engagement parties. It's like for these things where, like, I don't know. I think that makes me incredibly happy and very proud that not exactly strangers want to share those things, and you can make them better or worse.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to think about it. And it also describes, probably why you stayed at the places that you stayed at so long, because that very much describes, basic.
Yeah.
Where you ply your trade most recently, when things are allowed to be open, and what it feels special about it.
I think like community and fellowship and that sort of thing, like allowing people to feel vulnerable and taken care of. And also, like, I don't know, if you're drinking, there's got to be a certain amount of trust within the room. And it's a social contract that not everyone is ready to adhere to or hold. But as long as you can keep it just like here, it doesn't go here, it doesn't go here. Like you can make slight adjustments, but it's the hard thing where as soon as it spikes one way or the other, it's sort of a chaos that I used to enjoy because you can monetize it. But now, like, I don't know, man, another $100 a night that I have to grab somebody and like throw them out a door, or like sweep up broken glass and do all sorts of stuff like that. Like, I don't know, I'm not into it anymore.
It almost sounds like religion in a way too, the way that you frame it like that. Like almost like the bar is has a church-like quality to it, where because the word fellowship was really what kind of
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think when it's done right, there's a reverence, and it's not always met. If you conduct, I hate to say service, but if you conduct yourself in the way that you're working in an establishment a certain way, like, it generally comes back. And like you provide a service, but also like it's just met the same way. There's a harmony, I think, that when it's working on like a busy night, and if you're working with someone else, you're moving, like it's always like doing the dance. Like
Yeah.
into somebody, like you just brush against each other like the wind. No one's tripping on anything. There's not a glass breaking in the ice well. It's just like, I don't know. I love it. It's when it works, it's awesome. And when it doesn't work, this was the hardest lesson for me to ever learn. It's like you can fix it. You don't have to just like be carried out on your shield. Something went wrong, like calm down, take a breath, make people happy. They're going to be understanding, and like just go through it.
How does poetry fit in that framework, in that tapestry, in your life? Particularly, it sounds like it's been a bit of a journey in your San Francisco days and now in your New York days. Kind of like, I feel like it's fit into your life differently in different phases at different times and places.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, it's been something that I don't write as much as I used to now. But I also like, when the book came out, there's, imposter syndrome. There's the fear that you can't do it again. So like, it's easier to dive into bar stuff. And for me, like the writing things, like it's time and space and being alone and kind of shutting yourself off. So I've always kept those things really, really separate, because I think that in the hospitality realm of things, you're giving a lot more. And I think a friend of mine from grad school wrote this line, make yourself all honey and the flies will eat you. And it's just sort of, I'm pretty protective of the other side of myself because it's a lot more vulnerable. It's a little more uncertain. And I think giving that over to a stranger in a bar setting still makes me uncomfortable.
So it's not like you're working a 14-hour shift, you get all this energy and it fuels you to go write or something, and you're doing it late night, or like those old kind of like whiskey soaked writers that are so much the stuff of lore. It's not really that thing.
No, I mean, like at the end of a shift, I'll generally sit down at the bar, clean everything up, and I don't go home right away because I don't want to like carry that energy straight back to my house. Like it's easier to decompress and sit there, and I'll write at the bar a little bit, but it's, you know, I'm not sitting down for like an hour every day at the end of a shift. And then once I go through all those things that I've written, I'll sort of like Frankenstein things together, think about it, and see where like the different directions that have happened over the course of time intermingle, and how that can work as a poem, or I just eventually say it's not my place to think about this working as a poem. I just want to sit down and write, and I'll deal with it later.
Mm-hmm. And is that now like a structured thing where you're like, I'm gonna write an hour a day or before or whatever? It's like, or is it just it hits you?
More during quarantine, what I've been trying to do is just like sit down and I still work on a typewriter, and sit down at a typewriter and just like write a letter to someone, because I mean it's sort of the belief that we write for ourselves and the people we love, and to either express that or express ourselves. And I think that now, especially kind of being shut down, it feels more important to try to connect, or try not to go further interior.
Mm-hmm.
But, and also like it's, I don't know, I think the thing I'm struggling with now personally is that writing's fun, but when you think about it too much and you think it's got to be something at a level that we're amazed that it happened. I read stuff that I wrote. I'm like, God damn, how did I do that? And the same thing. I look at stuff I wrote in high school. I'm like, wow, I wish I was doing that more. Or just, I think that you don't have clear eyes on things as you're producing them.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It feels like every person that I've been is like, whoa, that was a thing. I don't remember even being that person. And I think that
it's person so much, and you hated them when you were that person.
And then you kind of grow affectionate, and you kind of miss them a little bit.
Yeah. So you move back into your parents' house and just start doing crap.
So that's the next phase. This is a bit of a pivot, but while you're out there and your backdrop is so beautiful, I'm kind of curious, what is your favorite nature memory? Or do you have like your relationship with nature?
Oh man, it's so clear. It's like a weird thing that I've had ever since I was a kid, where like if I had to go to surgery or something difficult's happening, I remember like growing up in Long Island, I was on a boat with my grandfather, who pretty much raised me. We're sitting on this like little metal boat. It was made by Grumman, which was like a big military base out in Long Island. It had like a small motor on the back, and the water was just shimmering off the Long Island Sound like perfectly. And for whatever reason, I figured out the exact depth you could drop this little like shiny fish hook down, and I was like pulling fish out like you couldn't absolutely believe. And it's just, I don't know, I think it's the happiest I've ever been in my life.
Yeah. What were you catching?
Snapper. Yeah.
Catch and release? Or did you
Tiny.
have a big
No,
meal?
we brought him home. He taught me how to fillet him. We cooked him up.
I don't know how to follow that one, man. Take us somewhere else after that.
There's a bunch. If you, to go less emotional and more nature, there's a hike out in San Francisco that is also one of my absolute favorite things. You start out, it's in Bolinas, which is a great place, sort of in the North Bay, I guess. And the inhabitants will like take down the sign so you can't find it. It's a real old hippie, super, super insular community, which is amazing. A lot of old poetry history there. But you start at the base of a bird sanctuary, and you can hike up like an hour and a half and get to Bass Lake, which the only way to get to this lake, it's got a rope swing, it's gorgeous, is to hike in. And if you go like another hour further, you can get to this waterfall that breaks into the Pacific Ocean and climb down there. Like, I've never seen anything, you know, I'm like an East Coast, partially city, suburb kid. I've never seen something like this. So that's also great.
When did you discover that?
Somebody that was, it's actually a funny story. That's when I decided I wanted to buy a motorcycle, because I was in a car with two people that I love very much, but they were annoying the shit out of me in the car the entire time. And then we went on the hike, and the hike was amazing. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to buy a car. I want to be able to go places like this by myself and not have to like make fun of each other and do the typical like idiot dude thing, to go like a moment of reverence. But yeah, it's one of those things that every time I go back to San Francisco, I keep saying I'm going to do this, but it's a phase commitment, and it involves like potentially not seeing people that you love that you don't get to see often.
Yeah, it's your inner skater kid coming out again. Now it's in the motorcycle life too.
I know. Just everybody leave me alone. Why aren't you hanging out with me?
I feel the same so often, man. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I always knew we were kindred spirits, but we never really spelled it out quite like this. So we've been sheltered in place. We've been locked up for what, like 3 months now?
Yeah.
You're in the belly of the beast. You're in New York, the epicenter. What has life been like since you couldn't go to work anymore? And I'm always interested to look on like the glass half full side of it. Has it been an opportunity that you've gotten something out of that has, you know, we touched on how it's affected you in the poetry world a little bit. You don't get to bartend anymore, but have you had a chance to read something or revisit something or grow?
Yeah, I'm a tremendous creature of habit and schedule and like routine. If you ever wanted to kidnap me, I walk the same way to work every day at the same time. I pass people on the street. That's how I know that I'm like on my hustle. Someone's leaving work, I'm going to work. It happens like every day with this one dude underneath the BQE. And I don't know, it just gives me some comfort. But for this, I just like, I don't know. I started with a bunch of little projects around the house. Like, okay, if we're going to be here, I'm going to like sand the deck and redo the deck that we have. And the main thing is like little projects, but also realizing just I'm super lucky right now. We've got this little outdoor space, live in a building with fantastic people that we get along great with. Alex, my partner, is wonderful. We've got like one big room that we live in, and like the small difficulty is that like you're never alone in that. But the other thing is like, you know, if I was alone, I would be miserable. It's just the times that I want to like not feel guilty about being a lazy person on the couch or something, or like. But I mean, the bar community for me here is very family-like. My mom's an hour away. We drove out there on Mother's Day and like brought her pizza and sat apart from each other in the cars. So I get to do all these things. And like, you know, the other things that I'm not allowed to do are fine, man. I've had tons of opportunity to do all those things. And most of the time when you be at a bar with people, you're having a great time. It's awesome. But like, you know how it ends. I'm not going to discover something new about myself at 5 o'clock in the morning at a bar in New York City.
You did at one point maybe, but
I did.
Enough now.
I mean, it's just, I've mastered that. I'm not going to get better at that. But, you know, like I started playing ukulele, which like is so annoying to say out loud as like the hairy Brooklyn beard guy. But I was like, I have one and it's easier than guitar. And if I suck at ukulele, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'll never be Jimmy Page, because I don't know who the Jimmy Page of ukulele is.
It was actually Jimmy Page. He was a brilliant ukulele player too.
Ukulele. No, but I mean, we got a couple plants. We're growing mint and basil now. We haven't really like gone into the degree of things we did last year because I don't want to go to like a nursery. But we make the backyard nice, make the house nice.
Yeah, life is different, but it still feels full.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is like checking in on people, I think, which whenever you've got the capacity to like, I don't know, I don't hesitate as much when I think about someone. I'm like, oh man, I wonder what they're doing. And then like get on the train and go somewhere. I go like, oh man, I wonder how they're doing. And I go like, well, you're not doing anything right now. Just fucking ask them. Like, and it's been, I mean, you as well, just in the course of this, I've been like, oh man, I don't tell you how much I think about you on like a normal day-to-day basis. And I think just like telling people that aren't a day-to-day part of your life anymore. And I think sometimes it takes leaving a place to do that. Because there's a lot of people that I see every day that I'm probably not letting know that.
Yeah.
But then like, oh man, I took that fucking dude for granted. Like we had so much fun. And then they left and I was like, oh, best of luck. And like a week later, I'm like, oh shit. Like that's my guy.
It's really shrunk the world in a really interesting way. You know, we have to be physically distanced, but it's changed the way that we socialize, not entirely for the worse.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, quote unquote work relationships, because I feel very close to all the people that I work with or like in the industry. I mean, they've gotten deep to be outside of just like, hey man, on Friday nights, don't do this. On Friday nights, like we're trying to come up with a plan. Now it's just like, yo, we have nothing to talk about other than like, how are you? And I've cared about you for a long time. It's just that we need to talk about like other just operational things before we can get to that.
Love it. So this thing's going to kick us off in like 6 or 7 minutes. What has we've already kind of danced around this, but one thing that I like that's like at the end of some podcasts and stuff is like, is there anything that you want to recommend? Be like, hey, this is a thing that's really brought me joy, particularly in the last 3 months. Like this poem, this book, this song, this album that I didn't know about. Like,
I mean, it's difficult because I absolutely hate doing like internet Facebook. The 10 album thing, I've been nominated like probably
50, probably.
8. Well, you like people that I care a lot about, but that's been like paralyzing. But it's made me go back and listen to so much stuff and try to, I'm treating it like a test that I might have a wrong answer to. So then I'm like, oh no, but what about this? What about this? What about this? It's made me listen to a lot of old music that I don't keep in like the general rotation and like seek out other new stuff. But yeah, I don't think there's one specific thing. I think that I try to go right up to the edge of where I might freak out about everything and make it negative. And like, like read a sad poem or read a poem about loss or feeling lost or mystery or something, or, I've taken a couple of showers listening to Beck's Sea Change. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, it's a good shower record.
It is. And I think it's a great driving record. But I think, I try to follow little arcs of that stuff in other people's work and then check in where like, as a barometer, where do I feel on that? Is that like, that's an amazing breakup record. I'm super happy and I'm like fortunate in my relationship, but like access to the feeling of that is still important.
Well, and there's a lot of ways into it. It's a breakup record, but it's also, it's a change record. And this is a moment of change. It's a moment of where all of those, kind of breakup tangential feelings and emotions still come out and still have a place.
What's your favorite Beck record?
Oh man, I like Sea Change a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, that was just a time that it came out, and Nigel Godrich, just the lushness of the production, kind of it coming out of left field for him, just as an artist to like do this now acoustic record. Um, it's probably Sea Change, but I also really liked Mutations a lot and No Delay. I mean,
Yeah, for sure. Another surprising thing where it's like I had completely forgotten about Jeff Buckley somehow.
yeah, I know. It's like
And,
because there's stuff now.
and I was like, oh wow, I'm just gonna listen to like Jeff Buckley, and that it's a root and like a pulling the root out at the same time, but like the root was there so long ago, it's never getting pulled all the way up again. Like that's a touchstone grace as a record. Yeah, and then just horrible television, watching like the worst television.
What are you on like Law and Order or like Blue Bloods or like what are you getting down on?
No, but though Eric and I skate right outside of the place where they produced Blue Bloods. I mean, not horrible, but like if you haven't seen the What We Do in the Dark TV show, amazing.
I also want to shout out Steve Casey, who's in the comments, who's
Oh yeah,
happy to jamming on Jeff Buckley.
yeah.
Steve, hope you're well.
Steve is like the at heart music person. What I think the one thing I will say that I care the most about in a bar, every night I close a bar slowly to sad music. And when you do that with friends that are hanging out with you, every Sunday night is just like a absolute gift. Because Steven might be there, you might be there, Eric's probably there, Thomas Thompson, and it's like as soon as the door locks, it goes to like Beck. We're playing John Prine. Like we've had contests who could play the saddest song.
I mean, Tom Waits always makes me.
Yeah.
Dude, closing's the best. Makes everything worth it. It's the ritual. I love that part of it.
I think it's funny because I've been having a hard time going to sleep at a reasonable hour. I feel like if I just put Long Way Home by Tom Waits on every night, I would be like, all right, cool. I'm a little bit sad. I'm like a little bit drunk. I did something during daylight hours, and tomorrow's no matter what.
I think that's our podcast. Yeah, Jason Molina Radio, man. I mean, like Songs Ohio, just that whole record, especially that
Coxcomb Red. Yeah. Well, I've kept Steva in the bar multiple times when she's like, I gotta go to the airport. I'm like, not unless you're crying with a to-go drink.
That's the thing. It's the tapestry that we built all this on. That's our podcast, though, man. It's like talking shop about all the best closing tracks, like
Oof.
bar closing time podcast. We're just gonna chat 1 hour every week. We're gonna get on the horn and then talk shit about closing bars.
And no one's allowed to make the playlist because it's got to be moment to moment.
Just whatever you're feeling.
Live DJ.
All right, man. This thing's kicking us off in 1 minute. So, is there anything you want to close us out on?
No, I love you. This is great. I miss you.
Yeah.
It's nice to hang out and share drinks and make drinks, and I can't wait till we can see each other again.
Thank you to everybody who's been here hanging out with us, Max, Eric, Eva, Jen, and it's nice to have you here on the other side of this, see your comments. But Russ, thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for everything, for your brain and your heart. Love it, brother.
Thank you. I love you too.
God bless. What's the closing song for this chat? There we go. Good.
Whoop! There it is.
Whoop! There it is.
Rex and effects.
Right now, then they'll probably take the whole thing down because of copyright violation. So we'll whoop! There it is. Imagine it in your heart, and we'll close it there. Love you, brother.
Bye, guys. Love you guys. Thank you.